In today's episode, I'm going to tell you all about what occurred during the opening statements and day one of testimony in the Richard Allen murder case, also known as the Delphi murders. So stay tuned. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I am Rebecca, your host of Crafting and Crime Daily. This is the show where I have designed it so that you can have something to listen to while you're creating those masterpieces out there. I've been working on a sweater and a blanket, and I'm making some headway and a shawl. I don't do anything lightly, right? I just jump into the whole thing. Anyway, that's the crafting portion of the show. Okay, I won't mention it again. We're going to talk about the Delphi murders. Richard Allen. We're going up to Carroll County, Indiana for this one. And don't look for it on YouTube. You won't find it. No cameras in this courtroom and no audio at the end of the day. So I am relying completely on a couple of YouTubers, and shout out to Andrea Burkhart. I know Lawyer Lee is there, and to be honest, I haven't watched her recaps, so I'm relying on Andrea Burkhart. She's really, really good. She's an appellate attorney out of the state of Washington, and fascinating to listen to her. And she takes copious notes on her yellow notepads to the point where she runs out of ink in her pens. So I can't give you the 8-hour version of the recap, but I'm going to do the best that I can. So let me tell you what's been going on in this case. Richard Allen, he's 52 years old. He's from Carroll County, Indiana. He was arrested in 2022 for the murders while committing kidnapping of Abby Williams and Libby German, who were teens, 13 and 14 years old. This was on February 13th of 2017. And I got to tell you, between the time these murders happened and the time that this guy was arrested, well, even afterwards, everything was sealed. The medical examiner report was sealed. Nobody knew how these girls died. They were keeping everything close to the vest. So a lot of things are just now coming out during the trial. So they started jury selection in a different county out of Fort Wayne, Indiana, because Delphi, Indiana, this little itty bitty town, less than 3,000 people in that town. So that what they did was they have a special judge. She's out of Fort Wayne, Indiana as well, Judge Gall, and she doesn't like the media. Just gonna say. So she was assigned as a special judge for this case. They picked the jury in her courtroom. They picked the jury on Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday was a day off. Thursday, they were arguing motions. And also on Thursday, the jury had to show up with their bags packed, get on a bus, travel to Carroll County, where they have been put up in a hotel for the duration of this trial. I believe, I'm not positive 100%, but I think they're having trial today on Saturday. I think they're taking tomorrow off Sunday, but I think they are having trial today. Because these jurors are sequestered. Yeah, this is a rare move, but one that I guess was necessary. Anyway, so the judge started out the morning by issuing a ruling that she had reserved ruling on. She wanted to do some research. There was a motion in limine, and a motion in limine is to exclude evidence or limit testimony. So kind of give you a guide to how you're going to try your case. So there was a motion in limine to exclude the composite photographs by the state. State does not want anybody to see the composite photographs. So what these are two artist renderings that were done of a suspect. And first of all, they don't look anything alike. They don't even look like Richard Allen, which is why the defense wanted to show them. But the judge ruled, no, they're not coming in. You cannot mention them during your openings. Do not talk about the composites. They were excluded. Why? Some sort of hearsay. Yeah. Anyway, then she proceeded to throw out 3 people, 3 members of the media. One was with NBC News. They had apparently been cited or caught photographing the jurors. So they were not allowed back in the courtroom. Secondly, I need to tell you that there's only 24 seats for the public in this courtroom. So these people, including Andrea and Lori Lee, are lining up at 3 o'clock in the morning and barely getting a seat in the courtroom. Then when they go to lunch, they have to get back in line because the line starts all over again. So no lunch for these people unless they're do like Nate Eaton did. Just bring your own lunch. Just pack your peanut butter and jelly. And anyway, so a couple of things about this case that are a little different than normal, other than the fact that we're not getting to see it. The jurors are allowed to ask questions. So at the end of the testimony, they can raise their hand if they have a question and they, obviously write it down and submit it to the judge. And then they'll talk about whether that's question is legally allowed to be asked. Also, they are allowed to discuss the evidence. Now, they're not allowed to reach any conclusions, but as long as they're all in the same place, like maybe dinner, I don't know, they can talk about the evidence. Isn't that interesting? Most trials, you are not allowed to talk about. You hear the judge admonishing, don't talk about this case until you get into deliberations. Do not talk about it. Don't talk about it. By the way, don't talk about it. They can talk about it. Interesting, huh? All right. So opening statements finally occur Friday morning after this whole week that I just described. The state's theme was bridge guy, bullet, and brutal murder of 2 young girls. That was his theme. This happened on February 13th. It was an unseasonably warm day outside. Abby and Libby had decided to go to the Monon High Bridge. Now, Abby had, I hope I get this right. I get these two confused. Hold on. I just want to make sure I'm getting them correct about which one's which. Okay. Abby lives with her mom. She has no siblings, and she had spent the night somewhere else the night before, and then, or 2 nights before. And then the night before the murders, she had spent the night with Libby, her best friend. Best friends forever. These two, they were in the band. They liked soccer, volleyball, the whole thing. All their friends were within that group. So she spends the night with Libby. Libby lives with her grandmother, her father, Derek. Her grandmother's name is Becky. Same as me. So she spends the night at their house. They have the day off from school. It's a Monday. They don't have to go to school that day. So they're like, we want to go to this bridge. Can you drive us? Well, Derek had to go he does odd jobs, but he was also working for Becky, his mother, who has some kind of business she does out of the home. He needed to go do some photography. So he says, no, I can't, So they get a ride from Libby's sister. I think her name was Kelsey German. So she is that how it went? Yeah. So she gives them a ride. She was on her way to work, but she gives them a ride. They wanted her to go with them. Come on, let's go with you. Because Kelsey liked to do photography, but she said, no, I have to work. So she drops them off. During this drive to the Monon High Bridge, Libby has a phone, has her cell phone. Now, Abby does not have a cell phone, but Libby's cell phone, apparently Abby knew the code to get into it. So they kind of shared it, so to speak. And Libby loved Snapchat. And she loved photography like her sister Kelsey. So in the car on the way to the Monon High Bridge, they're taking pictures. Libby's taking pictures. So one of the pictures came into evidence. And of course, I don't have it to show you, but she takes a selfie and you can see Abby in the background. Then they get to the bridge. Sister drops them off, and Derek, the father, is supposed to pick them up later on. So the Monon High Bridge is part of this series of trails that's out there in Indiana, and you can get there a few different ways, but you can park in this one area and you can get to the bridge. And Andrea described this bridge that it's terrifying, absolutely terrifying. It is a railroad. What do they call it? Railroad trestle, train trestle. And like, it's not a bridge that you just really, it's not meant to walk on. There's railroad ties with spaces that people can fall through. I would not be on there. No way. No. In fact, apparently the jury was shown a drone footage of this trail and going over the bridge, and it has changed since the murders in 2017. You cannot cross that bridge now. Before you could cross it, I wouldn't, but a lot of people would. But what they've done is they've replaced the old railroad ties, and they've made a portion of it so you can walk on a portion of it. And there are railings on the side, but you can only go out maybe a quarter of the way. And it's a very, very long bridge. So the other picture that came into evidence was one where apparently Libby goes first across the bridge. When she gets to a certain point, and she hadn't gone very far, she turns around with her camera and she's filming, or I don't know if it was a picture or video. I don't know. But I think it was just a picture. She takes a picture of Libby, and there's a guy behind her on the bridge. So the man on the bridge guy, they're calling him the bridge guy. So, and this train trestle is 60 foot above this small little creek. So 60 feet. Yeah. I'll pass. Thank you very much. Yeah. So Dad arrives to pick them up about 3:30-ish. And so he calls Libby's phone. She does not answer. And he doesn't like to text. So he calls Libby's phone. She doesn't answer. I'm going to tell you what he testifies to in a little while. But in any case, the girls are missing. There's a search for them, and they're found the next morning, around lunchtime the next morning. Apparently this bridge, once you get across the bridge, if you go to the left, there's a path down to a creek, but along that pathway it leads to a driveway. And if you follow that driveway, you'll come to an access road, but there's also a guy that lives at the end of this driveway. His name is, I have it here somewhere in all of my notes. We'll get to it anyway. And he was questioned. Trust me, he was questioned. So the path ends at this creek, and if you follow the creek down, that's where their bodies were found. Down the hill. So Libby, we know, takes video footage of this man. It's on her phone. And we've all seen that footage where it's so haunting, where he says down the hill. But more to come on that. So the girls are discovered. Now, I'm trigger warning here. I'm going to describe how they were discovered. So if you don't want to hear the gore, fast forward it a minute or two. So Libby was naked and bloody, and her throat was cut in several places. There was also blood up against a tree. Abby was found in her own underwear, but she had on Libby's shirt and jeans and a pair of shoes with no socks. And then when they rolled Libby over, underneath Libby was her cell phone. That's how they discovered the cell phone. Now, the state goes on to talk about the bridge guy. Now, this bridge guy was identified by several different witnesses that we're going to hear from. And they each kind of describe something different that they're seeing about this guy. And that'll be really interesting to hear the different versions of what this guy looked like. Then Richard Allen in 2017 was interviewed by someone from the Department of Natural Resources, because, this is a public trail. Anyway, during that interview, he said, yeah, he was out there. I think he got out there about 1:30-ish. He goes out there and he tells the investigator during the interview, yeah, I ran into 3 girls while I was out there. So that was his interview. Well, years later, I guess they're going through stuff and they find this interview and they start to suspect him again. So they contact him again and they get a search warrant for his home, where they find a gun. Now, I forgot to mention, at the scene of Abby and Libby's, where they were found, they found a shell casing that goes to a .40 caliber weapon. So, lo and behold, Richard Allen has .40 caliber. But I'm going to tell you a little secret. So do a lot of the police officers in this area. They have .40 caliber. So do a lot of people in this area. They have .40 caliber, including that guy that lives at the end of the driveway. He also has a .40 caliber weapon. One for everybody, right? Okay. So they contact him again, and they discover that the casing matches the gun. So they arrest him. They also find in his home a Carhartt jacket that matches what one of the witnesses said he was wearing. And we see it in the video, this Carhartt jacket. So he's arrested. And while he's incarcerated, he confesses to killing Abby and Libby. But he doesn't give the correct information. Says he shot them. But here's the kicker. According to the state, he gave them information only the murderer would know. But he didn't tell us what it was. He left everybody hanging. We don't know what that information is. I can't wait to hear it. Because the defense gets up during their opening and says, first of all, this investigation was botched from the very beginning. Interviews took place that were lost along the way. They did talk about this hair that was found in Abby's hand. That was like everybody, it was all over the internet for the last few days because the defense did this. Each side got to do like mini opening statements in front of the prospective jurors while they were being selected. And the defense mentioned this hair that was found in Abby's hand. Well, turns out that hair was never identified. They did run, it had a root to it because, hairs don't provide DNA, but the root of the hair provides. Don't look at my hair. Don't stop. Don't look at my hair. Okay. Back. Okay. Thank you. So they run DNA. They get a profile. It's a female. And they've never tested to see who it is. So apparently they're doing that now. Everybody in Libby's family has given DNA. And the reason I'm saying Libby instead of Abby, because the hair was found in Abby's hand. Because before she gets out of the car, I gotta see her name again, Kelsey, when her sister Kelsey drops them off, or maybe sometime during the trip to the Monon High Bridge, she gives Abby a swim shirt to wear. And that could have had any one of Libby's family's hairs on it, including Kelsey, including Grandma Becky. So all of those people have submitted DNA again, because they all say, we gave it before, what happened? But anyway, so they're running the DNA now. We'll get the results. So then the defense says the phone was stagnant from 4 p.m. till approximately noon the next day when the bodies were discovered. So their theory is that she was killed around 4 p.m. They're saying that their client, Richard Allen, was on and off the trail by 4 p.m., that he left between 2 and 3 that day. And there's going to be evidence because there's this one particular store that you can pass, because there's a couple of different ways to get to the parking lot, but there's a store that you can pass that shows that has video surveillance footage that we're going to see of people coming and going. So Kelsey was dropped off the girls at 1:49 p.m. At 2:05 is when they get to the bridge. Now, this is the defense's theory. They get to the bridge around 2:05. Around 2:07, the photo that is taken on the bridge. And at 2:13, they're abducted. Now, they're trying to say that their client was gone by this time. Then you see a man saying down the hill. When you watch this video, and I haven't watched it since hearing this, but according to them, if you watch this video, the man's mouth is not moving when you hear down the hill. So the defense is throwing this out there to make everybody believe, could this have been a second person involved? Was there more than one person? So the defense argues there's no strong evidence regarding what happened that day. They're also arguing that Abby's phone may not have been under her body that whole time, that someone else had access to that phone, and someone did access that phone. Then they talk about false confessions, and this is like textbook false confession. I told you about the weapons. The police have those weapons. The neighbor had that weapon. And then the medical examiner is going to come in and testify that there were 2 different blades used, not just one, 2. Now, in Richard Allen's confession, he says he used a box cutter. No, he didn't. 2 different blades. So they're arguing that it's not feasible that just one person committed this crime. So finally, the defense argues that, they're going to hear from this woman named Becky Blair. She's one of the people that came forward and said she saw this person. And she said she saw him get out of his car that was reminded her of a car that her father once owned, an old Mercury, which would look nothing like the Ford Focus Richard Allen owns and drives. She also described that this was a younger man with bushy hair, and she doesn't talk about his height. Now, Richard Allen's very short, so that's something that would stick in your mind. Hey, he's very short. She doesn't say that. So the defense's theory is you've got the wrong guy, and it's probably more than one killer. Interesting. So the first witness on the stand is Becky Patty. This is the grandmother of Libby German. And her testimony was like, even when Andrea's describing it, she's tearing up. Is very sad. So she talks about Libby. She was in the 8th grade. She turned 14 in December, just a couple months prior to this. She participated in the math bowl. She liked band, soccer, volleyball. The last thing she said to her grandmother, now get your tissues ready. Grandma, I'll be okay. Grandma, I'm going to be okay. So she says Derek went to pick up the girls around 3:30. She wasn't answering her phone, Libby. So he calls Becky. So Becky starts texting and calling Libby, and she's not getting a response. So that's when they decide they're going to go look for them. So they checked different routes. What they did was some of them went to the trails. Some of them followed a couple of routes that the girls could have taken if they had decided to walk home, and they didn't find anything there. Then Becky calls AT&T, their cell phone provider, and says, "Can you ping the phone?" And AT&T says, "Nope, we can't do that." Oh my God, why not? So sad. Anyway, talks about they kept searching and it was starting to get dark, so they decided to go to the police and make a report. She said Libby is afraid of the dark. So she tried to call Abby's mom, and Abby's mom, she was told that Abby's mom was at work. I think she's a bartender. She's at work, and she wasn't getting an answer. So she finally gets a call back from Abby's mom, and they decide to all meet up at the police station. So the next person on the stand was Kelsey, the sister, and she, at the time of this incident, was 17 years old. She was a junior in high school, and she now is married, has a child or a child on the way, or maybe both. I didn't get that detail. She has gotten a bachelor's in psychology, and she was asked, apparently they have this large blow up of the bridge and the trails and everything. So she was asked to like kind of point out some things for the jury. And then there was Derek German, the father, took the stand. There wasn't a lot of cross-examination here because these are fact witnesses. These are the family. You don't want to beat up on them. Derek, the father, Libby's father, he talked about the multiple phone calls and the search that they went through. And then there was Anna Williams, who took the stand. That's Abby's mom. And she talked about the reason she wasn't answering the phone calls from Libby's grandmother is because she didn't have her in her contacts. So it was just coming up with a phone number, and she didn't recognize that phone number, so she wasn't answering it. You know, I did the same thing. Bill collector? Nope, not answering it. But she did finally call them back and realize it was Libby's grandmother. She did not participate in the searches. Then we had the deputy Catron. So apparently, when Anna Williams was done testifying, the state said, "No, we don't have any more witnesses." And the judge got mad. She's like, "Oh, you know," because she's all about time efficiency, you know. So they come up with this deputy, like, "Oh, wait a minute, we can put this deputy on." So Deputy Catron takes the stand. He was on duty when the call came through around 5:15 about 2 missing girls. So he drove out to the access road. Remember I talked about there's an access road. There's another way to get to the access road. He drives to the access road. He doesn't do a lot of intensive searching because his shift is ending very soon. But he kind of, you know, he gets out of his truck and just looks around. Goes to the driveway, looks around, goes to Brian Weber, that's the name of the neighbor, goes to Brian Weber's home, knocks on the door, and he said the man was, dressed normally. He didn't have any blood or mud or anything on his clothing. He wasn't sweaty. He wasn't anxious. Nothing like that. He wasn't antagonistic. But he said, "Hey, can I just search your field? We've got a couple of missing girls. Can I just search your field?" And he didn't go. There was a couple of structures in the field, a barn and some other structure. He did not go inside those structures. He just kind of looked around. His shift ends. He goes home. And that was it. That was his testimony. Yeah, there was one jury question. Well, two jury questions. The jurors ask, are there a lot of people that turn around before they go across that bridge? And the deputy says, I don't know. I honestly don't know. The other question was, is there another trail that goes down to the creek where you don't have to cross that bridge? And he said, no, there's not. So Interesting. Interesting. So that's where the testimony ended on Friday. Yes. So I will keep bringing you these updates. Thank you, Andrea Burkhart, for your recaps. I'm sorry you have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to sit in that line. I really, really am. And someday I'd love to talk to you in person about your experience during this trial. So that's it, guys. That's day one. I'll see you in the next video, where I'm going to describe the opening statements and day one of Sarah Boone. So stay tuned. Take care, everybody. Bye.